In 2010, police entered a suburban house after a neighbor complained of a smell. What they found inside was impossible. A family, untouched, frozen in 1994. Meals uneaten. Lights on. Phone off the hook. But there was no missing person report. Ever. It started with a smell. Not rot exactly. Something sour. Chemical. Electrical. Even. A single-story house on a corner lot in suburban Ohio. Mailbox overflowing. Lawn halfway mowed. Curtains still drawn in the same crooked angle they'd been for years. The caller was an older woman. Martha, 76. She had lived across the street since 1981. She told dispatch. They always waved. Quiet folks. One day they just stopped. She assumed they moved. Until the newspapers piled up. Until the air turned wrong. Until one spring morning, the smell came into her vents. 2 officers arrived. They expected squatters. Maybe a dead animal. Instead, they opened the front door and found a world that wasn't theirs anymore. The television was still on, flickering static in the living room. A half-eaten casserole on the dining table, now shriveled, mummified, but still clearly recognizable. Chairs pulled out, one knocked slightly over. A child's backpack sat by the front door. Inside, a 1994 field trip form. Signed, never turned in. Everything inside was from 1994. The magazines on the coffee table. The milk in the fridge, long evaporated. Even the phone was off the hook, emitting that endless flat beep that no one heard for 16 years. But strangest of all was the family. The father was seated on the couch, back straight, remote still in hand, eyes open, not skeletonized, not decomposed, just still. The mother was in the kitchen, mid-turn, as if she heard a noise, one hand on the counter, the other reaching for the wall phone. Frozen, 2 children lay in their beds upstairs, tucked in, eyes closed, no struggle, no signs of panic, just sleep, and then nothing. The coroner was speechless. No lividity, no decay, he whispered. They're not embalmed. They're just there. Time had not touched them. No mold on the furniture. No sun damage on the photographs. No dust on the mantel. Only one thing in the house had aged. The electricity meter. Still running. Still counting units. Still billing a family who no longer moved. The police searched public records. No missing persons report. No calls from relatives. No one looking for the Carsons. No birthdays. No school inquiries. No flagged Social Security data. It was like they were erased the moment they died. If they died, because the autopsy couldn't confirm cause of death. Heart? Still. Brain? Inactive. But every organ preserved, as if they'd been paused. The case was labeled undetermined, then sealed. But one officer, the youngest on the scene, couldn't let it go. Detective Ehrenhall. She filed an internal memo. I believe we found something more than a death. I believe we found a message. She started digging into building permits, city archives, old tax records, and she found something strange. The Carsons had paid property tax through 2003, even though they were gone by 94. The payments came from a digital routing number, registered to a bank that didn't exist anymore. When she tracked the routing path, it terminated in Langley, Virginia. FBI got involved. Quietly, not publicly. They sealed the home, declared it biohazardous, demolished it 6 weeks later. But not before Hall returned one last time. She snuck inside with a recorder. You can still hear her voice. There's something under the floorboards. I can feel it hum. This place isn't just dead. It's holding something back. She pried open a loose plank near the boys' room, found a tin box. Inside, a VHS tape, unlabeled, and a note. If you're reading this, time already chose you. Hall played the tape that night. It's never been released. But according to her report, and later her resignation letter, it showed a clock spinning backward, a woman's voice whispering in reverse, and the Carson children sitting up in their beds, looking directly at the camera. The tape ended with a single word: wait. Detective Hall never spoke publicly again. She disappeared in 2012, last seen boarding a ferry to Mackinac Island, the same day the original case file vanished from police records. But the smell came back in 2014. Different house, different family, different state. Same date, March 19th. Same time, 7:41 p.m. Same result, frozen in place. Unaged, unmissed, undead. There's something wrong with the clocks. Something that doesn't tick forward anymore. And now you've heard it, too. They said it couldn't happen again. That what happened to the Carsons was anomalous. A one-time event. A cold case, literally and metaphorically. But 3 years later, it happened again. Different house, different state, different family, but the same date, March 19th, the same minute, 7:41 p.m. This time it was a schoolteacher named Grace Keller. She taught 6th grade in a small town in Arkansas. She missed school one Monday, then Tuesday. By Wednesday, her principal stopped by her home, a single-story cottage tucked behind maple trees. No answer at the door, no motion inside, but the porch light was still on, mail still in the box, and the unmistakable scent of something sweet and wrong. The principal called the police. They forced entry. What they found: no struggle, no violence, just stillness. Grace was seated on the couch, back upright, a book open in her lap, a journal, actually her own. The pen rested between her fingers, still uncapped, still inked, still wet, like she had been writing a second before they arrived. In the kitchen, a kettle whined on the stove. Water inside, not steaming, not boiling, just sitting, like time had skipped its turn. The power worked. The clock on the microwave read 7:41 p.m. Frozen, just like before. Detective Roman Gray took the case. Unlike the Carson incident, this one made local news. Briefly, until it didn't. Until federal agents came in. Until they quietly removed the kettle, the journal, and the video doorbell system. Until the front porch was marked for structural hazard. Until the story vanished from headlines like it had never happened. But someone saw it. A podcaster. Name: Theo Ridge. He covered cold cases and unexplained crimes. He remembered the Carson family. He downloaded the archive police reports before they were sealed. When he heard about Grace Keller and the strange timestamp, his blood ran cold. Same day, same time, same nothing. He drove to Arkansas. Too late. The house had been boarded up. But he interviewed the principal, and something she said didn't make sense. When I looked in through the window before the cops arrived, I swear she blinked. Theo leaned in. You're sure? I was so sure I called her name. I thought she'd fainted. But when I blinked, she was gone. He obtained a copy of Grace's class photo, looked into each student, and one name came up flagged. Lyle Benning, age 12, disappeared in 1994. But that couldn't be possible. Lyle had been declared missing during a camping trip 2 states away. No known connection to Grace. No physical resemblance to any of her students. Yet there he was, standing next to her in the photo, labeled L. Benning, math star, Theo filed a FOIA request. It was denied. He tried again and again. Nothing. Until one night, he received a package. No return address. Inside, a photograph, a timestamp. March 19th, 1994, 7:41 p.m. It showed a group of children seated in a classroom. In the center, Lyle Benning. On the chalkboard behind him, "Time is the keeper of us all." Theo checked the metadata. The image was clean, unaltered, real. He went back to the Carson files. Re-watched a leaked video from a first responder's body cam. At minute 2:17, the camera pans across the living room. And there, barely visible through the upstairs window, a child's face. Not one of the Carson kids. Someone else. Staring back. Expressionless. Unblinking. Watching the responders enter the house. Then, gone. Theo isolated the face. Cross-referenced it against school records. It matched the student at Grace Keller's school. Same kid. Same face. 20 years apart. He called Detective Roman Gray. Roman didn't answer. The next day, Theo received a voicemail. No words, just a ticking clock. And then a child's voice. "Why did you look?" Click. Theo went quiet for 2 weeks. No new podcast episodes. No blog updates. Then, a final post appeared on the site, titled, "We don't die. We pause." It read, "There's something older than death living beneath the hours. It chooses who to keep. It feeds on moments forgotten. And every March 19th at 7:41 p.m. it feeds again." Detective Gray was found shortly after, in his car, eyes open, engine running, radio static, clock on the dash, 7:41 p.m. 3 events, same time, same stillness. But this time, someone noticed. Back in Ohio, the Carson house, now an empty lot, began to grow grass in one perfect circle. Nothing else. Just that single, untouched circle of green. A child was seen sitting in it once, drawing a spiral in the dirt. When neighbors approached, he vanished, but left behind one word, carved into the soil. Again. It was always 7:41 p.m. No matter the state, no matter the year, no matter the victim. By now, there were 4 known cases, but there may have been more. The kind that never made the news. The kind no one noticed, because no one remembered who was gone. That was the thing about these disappearances. People stopped asking questions, stopped noticing. The Carsons weren't missed. Grace Keller students barely spoke her name. Detective Gray's family, according to records, never filed a report, because maybe they couldn't. Some force was erasing not just people, but memory, removing evidence from the inside out, leaving behind only stillness. And clocks stuck at 7:41. Then came a man with the watches. His name was Malcolm Finch, a former horologist, clockmaker, obsessive archivist of antique timepieces. He ran a watch repair shop on a dead-end street in a town no one remembered passing through. Customers said he never smiled, but his hands moved with precision, perfect mechanical grace. In 2015, Malcolm began receiving clocks in the mail. All broken, all stopped at 7:41. No return address, no note, just box after box, 37 of them, each one dated March 19th. Different years, same hour. At first, Malcolm thought it was a prank or an elaborate art project. But then he found one clock in particular, a wooden mantelpiece model from 1994. Inside the casing was a Polaroid of a family he didn't recognize. They were standing outside a house, the same house the Carsons had lived in. The timestamp? March 19th, 1994, 7:41 p.m. Malcolm did what most people didn't. He looked deeper. He ran facial recognition on the photo. One match. The mother in the picture was Margaret Carson. But her face wasn't just in one photo. It showed up again in another clock from 1983. This time, she was younger, holding a different child. And the clock inside that box also stopped at 7:41. Malcolm cross-referenced old census data, found 24 families whose names never appeared in missing persons databases. Yet their mail still arrived, gas bills still paid, electricity still registered. But no one remembered them. Not friends, not employers, not neighbors. They were ghosts who never died, because no one ever knew they were gone. Malcolm began recording audio notes. Something isn't right with the hours between 7:40 and 7:42. It's like something slips in, like time hiccups. I've seen it in pendulums, in the silence between ticks. He started wearing 5 watches at once, different brands, different ages, and all of them would glitch at 7:41 p.m. every single night. One night, he stayed late in his shop. The clocks started ticking on their own, unsensed. A burst of motion, then complete silence. And then a voice, low, breathless, not from outside, from inside the wooden walls. It whispered, "Why are you watching?" Malcolm backed away from the workbench. His 5 watches all clicked at once, hands spinning backward. In the mirror behind him, a face appeared. Not his. He ran from the shop, left the lights on, never returned. 2 weeks later, someone broke in. The walls were covered in chalk marks, drawings, equations, timelines, names, and in the center of the floor, a perfectly round pile of clock hands, all stopped at the same time. Detective Aaron Hall, now working privately since her resignation, heard about the break-in. She traveled to the shop, broke in herself. In the back room, she found a single remaining item, a VHS tape, same kind as the one she found under the Carson house. On the label, March 19th, 1992, the first pause. Hall didn't have a VHS player, but she knew someone who might. A boy named Jacob Delmer, now in his 20s. He had survived something strange as a child, a blackout at a school in 2003. All clocks had stopped. His entire class had vanished for 3 minutes. But he remembered what none of them did. There was a room, no walls, just ticking, just watching. Hall tracked him down in Maine, living alone, drawing spirals in a notebook. He recognized her immediately. "You've seen the spiral, too." She gave him the tape. He didn't ask what was on it. He only asked, "Do you have headphones?" He played the tape, not through speakers, but wired into an oscilloscope. The image was distorted, but the frequency of the audio produced patterns, geometric spirals, and one word repeated again and again, chronostasis. The illusion that time stands still when you first look at a clock. But this wasn't an illusion. Time was standing still, by force, by design. Jacob turned to her and whispered, "They're harvesting silence. They need 7:41 to be still so they can slip between." Hall asked, "Who?" He only said, "The time collector." She asked him to explain, but he froze. Literally, mid-sentence, eyes open, lips parting to speak. But nothing moved. Hall screamed his name, tried to shake him. No pulse, no breath, but no decay, just like the Carsons. She looked at her watch. 7:41 p.m. Then, on his wall, she noticed a drawing. Same spiral, same markings, and a single sentence written beneath it. "He never collects everyone. Only the ones who remember. Jacob's head tilted slowly, not by his own doing, like an invisible hand was guiding him, and his lips moved once, mouthing something. She read it. 3 words. "You're next, Aaron." Aaron Hall ran from the house, ran from Jacob, ran from the boy who had just mouthed 3 impossible words. "You're next, Aaron." She didn't look back, because she couldn't. Not out of fear, out of certainty. Somehow she knew if she looked back, she wouldn't remember what she saw. She got in her car, locked the doors, and sat in silence. Her breathing came in short, sharp bursts. Her pulse wouldn't settle. The clock on the dashboard blinked once, then froze. 7:41 p.m. Again, always. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove 4 hours through the night to a motel outside Concord, New Hampshire, checked in under a false name, threw her watch in the trash, unplugged the digital clock, but the silence still followed her. Everywhere. She tried to sleep, but her dreams turned cold, not violent, not nightmarish, just quiet, too quiet, like the world had been padded with cotton, like she was moving inside a snow globe someone had stopped shaking. Time suspended, and in every dream, the same ticking. She woke up drenched in sweat. The room was warm, but her hands were ice. She reached for her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no timestamp. The screen just read, paused. At the motel front desk, she asked the clerk for a landline. He tilted his head. "We haven't had phones here in years." She asked him the date, March 18th. The blood left her face. And the time. The clerk stared for a second too long, then smiled. "Almost time." She ran, didn't pack, didn't check out, just got in the car, turned the key, but the car wouldn't start. Battery was fine, fuel tank full, but the engine was locked, frozen, like the air around her. She grabbed her phone again. No signal. Still, but a single notification had appeared. Voicemail, unknown number. She played it. A child's voice. "Why are you still awake?" Click. She didn't scream. She couldn't, because somewhere deep inside her, a part of her was starting to understand. This wasn't about murder, or ghosts, or even time travel. This was about removal, selective forgetting. The time collector didn't kill people. It unthreaded them from reality, and it only took the ones who remembered. She needed help, someone who hadn't yet been touched, someone who had seen the spiral and survived. There was only one name left on her list. Clara Wren, age 51, archivist, former post office worker in Ohio. In 1994, she filed a misdirected envelope that no one else could trace. The address, 37 Halbert Lane, the Carsons' house. The envelope contained no letter, just a photograph of the family, and a handwritten line on the back. They never moved in. Clara had kept it. She still had it, and she never told anyone until she met Hall in 2008. Back then, it seemed like a clerical fluke. Now it was a thread, the only thread Hall could pull. She drove to Clara's home in Vermont, found the woman sitting on the porch, knitting. Her eyes were foggy, not blind, just distracted. Aaron said her name. Clara didn't respond until she whispered, "Are you the one with the tape?" Aaron nodded. Clara stood slowly, motioned her inside. The living room was old-fashioned, books everywhere, blank clocks on the wall, no hands. Aaron noticed something carved into the fireplace mantel, a spiral, but not just any spiral. It looped 3 times, then ended with a single straight line, like a sundial shadow. Clara poured tea. Neither of them drank it. Then Clara spoke. I saw them. Once. Not the Carsons. The ones who took them. Described them. Clara shook her head. They don't cast shadows. You see movement, but it's always just after, like your mind replays it too late. And you weren't taken? No. I forgot. But you remember now. Only because you asked. She handed Aaron a small, flat box. Inside, the photo, the same one Clara had described. But this time, there was something new. A window in the background, and in that window, a reflection, a figure, long, thin, impossible, no face, no color, just a smear of distortion. Clara whispered, "I've started hearing them again." What do they say? Nothing. That's the worst part. Aaron looked back at the photo, felt the weight of it, of its silence, of its unspeakable, frozen scream. She asked Clara if she still had the envelope. Clara pointed to the bookshelf. Top shelf. Inside a red dictionary. Aaron reached for it, opened the book, but there was no envelope. Instead, a small metal key, tied with black thread. No tag, no label. Clara stood beside her. I never put that there. Do you know what opens? Yes. Aaron turned to her, stunned. What? The mailbox at 37, Halberd Lane. But the house was demolished. No, that's what they told you. The outside was demolished, but the place is still there. Aaron froze. Every part of her body screamed not to believe it, but the voice inside her head, the one that had been getting louder since Jacob's death, whispered something else. They can't erase the door if someone's holding the key. Outside, the sky had turned gray, heavy, like dusk had arrived early. But Aaron checked her watch. Still 6:44 p.m. She had less than 1 hour before everything stopped. She turned to Clara. You're coming with me. Clara didn't hesitate. I always knew I would. Together, they packed 2 flashlights, a hand-cranked tape recorder, and a photograph of the Carson family. Aaron slipped the metal key into her coat pocket. It was cold, colder than anything she'd felt before. As they drove back toward the address no one remembered, the clocks in Clara's home all began ticking, one after the other, faster and faster. Then suddenly, they all stopped, every single one. The hands froze, and all read 7:41 p.m. The road to 37. Halberd Lane no longer showed up on maps. Google Earth marked it as undeveloped woods. Street view turned blank after the 3rd mile. But Aaron Hall remembered the turn. She remembered the silence. And now, sitting beside her in the passenger seat, Clara Wren traced her fingers along the outline of the key in her coat pocket like it had always been meant for her. They reached the lot just before sundown, where the Carson home once stood, now only grass. But the grass was wrong. Too green, too even, no birds overhead, no wind, just the kind of silence that presses in on your skin. Clara stepped forward first. She didn't hesitate. She walked directly to the edge of where the front porch used to be. She stopped, bent down, and cleared some grass with her hand. And there, half buried in soil, was a rusted mailbox post. Bent, crooked, but still standing. A door at the top, a lock just beneath it. Aaron looked at her. Clara nodded. So Aaron pulled out the black threaded key. It slid in perfectly, turned without resistance. The lock clicked, and for a moment, nothing. No wind, no movement, no sound. Then the mailbox creaked open. Inside, not letters, a cassette tape, labeled in red marker. The 5th clock, and beneath it, a folded photograph. The Carsons again. But this time, something had changed. They were all older, more drawn, their eyes wide but empty, like they'd aged behind glass. And in the background, the date on the calendar behind them now read, March 19th, 2004. That's 10 years after they vanished, Aaron whispered. They didn't vanish, Clara said softly. They were kept. Aaron turned the photo over. One word was scrawled on the back in a different hand. Listen. Back in the car, they inserted the cassette into Clara's old player. Hit play. Static. Then a woman's voice. Breathless. Scared. It was Margaret Carson. This is my 5th recording. If this one reaches anyone, please remember us. They come when the clocks freeze. They feed on forgotten seconds. They don't like being watched. Don't stare at the mirrors. Don't ask what time it is. Don't. Click. Then silence. Then the ticking started. But it wasn't on the tape. It was real. Inside the car. They looked up, and every gauge on the dashboard was spinning. Fuel, battery, oil temp, all ticking like second hands. Faster, faster, until they stopped. All at once. 7:41 p.m. Aaron turned the ignition. Nothing. She looked at Clara, who was staring forward, eyes wide, unmoving. Clara, she whispered. No response. Not even a blink. But then Clara turned, just slightly, and whispered something Aaron couldn't hear. What? She asked. Clara leaned closer. We're already inside. Aaron stepped out of the car. She looked around. The trees hadn't changed. The wind hadn't moved. But something was wrong. She saw the house, the Carson home, back, rebuilt, just as it had been in 1994. Except the lights inside were already on. Clara, she said, not turning, do you see that? But Clara wasn't behind her. Aaron spun around. The car was gone. The mailbox gone. The grass gone. Just trees now. And the house. Standing. Waiting. She checked her watch. 7:40 p.m. 1 minute left. 1 minute to decide. Go inside or disappear like all the others. But something was pulling her now. A memory. Something Jacob said before he froze. They never collect everyone. Only the ones who remember. She remembered too much. She had seen too much. There was no running anymore. She walked toward the house. Step by step. The air got colder. Thicker. Like walking through fog. But there was no fog. Only time bending. Compressing. Like she was moving into the second between seconds. The porch creaked. The door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were on. Dinner was set. The living room pristine. Exactly like it was in 1994. But it was more than familiar. It was identical. Perfect. Like a photograph made real. Even the TV in the corner was playing the same static loop. On the wall above the fireplace. A clock. Ticking down. 7:40:30. 7:40:31. And then her voice from the upstairs hallway. You made it. Aaron turned and saw herself standing halfway up the staircase. Older, wearing the same coat, holding the same photograph. But her eyes were hollow. What is this? Aaron whispered. The older version answered. It's always been you. What's always been me? The remembering. Suddenly, the house began to vibrate. Lights flickered. The air shimmered like heat off asphalt, and the spiral pattern appeared on every surface. Walls, carpet, even the TV. All spirals, all spinning. The fireplace roared to life, and from within the flames, a figure stepped out. Thin, featureless, its body not made of flesh, but absence, like something subtracted from a world. The time collector. It didn't speak. It didn't move. It just stood between them, and the clock above the mantel ticked louder. 7:40:59. 7 hours and 41 minutes. And everything froze. Erin couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, but she could see. She saw the house collapse into itself, the walls folding inward like pages, the sky turning black, and the collector reaching out, not to her, to the older version, and whispering, "You remembered too much." The older Erin began to dissolve, like ash blown from the inside out. But the real Erin, the one still standing, heard one last word escape from her fading mouth. "Run." And suddenly, time snapped back. The house gone. The collector gone. The porch beneath her feet gone. Just grass again. Just forest. And Clara, standing exactly where she had been. "Where did you go?" Clara asked, but Erin couldn't answer. She looked down. In her pocket, the photograph was gone. In its place, a pocket watch, its hands spinning backward. She looked at Clara, eyes wide, hands shaking. "I think we just broke the clock. There are hours that move forward. Then there are hours that do something else. They contract, collapse, swallow everything between one tick and the next, the backward hour." And Erin Hall was now inside one. She didn't know how she had returned. One moment, she was watching her future self vanish into spiral-shaped ash. The next, she was back in the woods. Same grass, same trees, same cold wind. Clara stood next to her, mouth slightly open, like she had never moved. "I think we just broke the clock," Erin had said. But the truth was worse. They hadn't broken it. They'd entered it. The pocket watch Erin found in her coat ticked in reverse. The hands danced backward, minutes unwinding like ribbon. Inside the glass, tiny etchings pulsed. A spiral, and in its center, one number burned faintly. 1994. "Clara," Erin said, voice brittle, "what year is it?" Clara blinked, then answered slowly, "I don't remember." Erin looked up. No stars above them now. Only a velvet black sky. No noise. No birds. Just ticking. They walked. The forest around them seemed staged, as if it had been painted onto the air. Trees repeated. Bark patterns cloned. A squirrel froze mid-motion, like a wax figure posed in a museum of silence. And ahead, dim orange light, the Carson house. Not the one from 2004, not the replica. The original, weathered, unkempt, curtains drawn, exactly as it had looked the night the family disappeared. Erin's heart dropped. She touched the pocket watch. Its hand spun faster now, and the date at the center shifted from 1994 to March 19th. "Clara," she whispered, "we're back." The night they vanished. They moved toward the house like wading through syrup. Every step felt heavier, like walking into memory. And when Erin reached the porch, it creaked. The sound was real this time, not frozen, not staged. Clara stood beside her, hands trembling. Erin placed her hand on the door, then paused. "What if we see them?" she asked. Clara didn't answer, because she was no longer looking at the door. She was looking behind them, eyes wide. Erin turned, and in the trees, 12 figures stood, still, identical, tall, shadow-wrapped, each face blurred, as if reality refused to define them. Time collectors, waiting. They weren't attacking. They were observing, measuring. Erin pushed open the door and stepped into 1994. Inside, the air was warm. Lamps glowed softly. A clock on the wall ticked forward. 7:22 p.m. Voices from the kitchen. Laughter. Margaret Carson was serving dinner. Her husband arranging silverware. 2 children, Lily and Max, play with forks like swords. Alive, unafraid. Erin couldn't breathe. She turned to Clara. Clara looked as if her bones might shatter. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered. But Erin stepped forward anyway. She reached the living room. The TV flickered. Static. And then the screen shifted. A live feed, not from the house. From outside, from the woods, showing the 12 figures. Still watching. Erin felt the house start to bend. Not physically, temporally, like the moment was becoming unstable, like a crack in glass. And the clock ticked. 7:40:00. Margaret. Erin screamed. Margaret turned. And her face registered Erin. Saw her. Recognized something. Not fear, but relief. "You found us," Margaret said. And in that instant, the lights went out. Everything snapped. The walls twisted. Glass shattered upward instead of down. Furniture bent around itself like knots in time. And the 12 collectors stepped inside through the cracks in space. Erin reached for the Carsons. But something invisible pulled her back, slammed her into the kitchen wall, held her there like gravity had reversed. She screamed, but the air swallowed the sound. In the center of the room, the Carsons froze, mid-motion, mid-sentence, eyes open, mouths parted, and the clock on the wall struck. 7:41 p.m., and it all went silent. Again, but this time, Erin was still conscious. She hadn't been erased. She watched as the time collectors moved through the house, not touching anything, just standing near the family, breathing them in, memorizing their shapes, then disappearing, one by one, leaving the Carsons behind, preserved, like wax, or thought. Then came the whisper, not from them, from the hallway. Erin turned. A door she hadn't noticed before was now open. Basement stairs descending into blackness. And from that void, a voice she recognized. "Jacob." This is where they kept the clocks. She stepped forward. Clara reached for her. "Don't go down there." But Erin was already halfway down. The air turned dense, smelled of iron and ozone. And as she reached the final step, she saw it, a room of clocks, wall to wall, thousands, all ticking backward, all set to 7:41 p.m., each labeled with a name, not just the Carsons, not just Jacob. Erin Hall, Clara Wren, you, yes, your name. Watching this now, a chill down your spine, a whisper in your room, because now you know, you remember. Erin turned toward the sound, and in the mirror on the far wall, not a reflection, but a version of her she hadn't yet become. Older, colder, wearing all black, holding a spiral in her palm. She said one word, "Tick," and the clocks began to break. Sparks flew, glass cracked, the room began to collapse. Erin ran. Clara screamed for her at the top of the stairs. And together, they bolted into the night. Behind them, the house imploded silently, folding it on itself like it had never existed. And above them, the sky turned back on. Stars reappeared. The moon emerged, and the ticking stopped. Or so they thought. Back in Vermont, weeks later, Clara received a package. No return address. Inside, a photograph. The Carsons smiling, sitting at a table in a field of sunflowers. Behind them, Erin Hall, smiling too, wearing the coat she burned a week earlier. And on the back of the photo, written in a hand that wasn't hers, "Some clocks aren't broken. They're hiding." The clock had stopped ticking. But Erin Hall couldn't sleep, not because of fear, not anymore. Because the silence had changed. It wasn't hollow anymore. It was full, full of something waiting, watching, breathing. She sat alone on the motel bed in Vermont. The photograph still lay beside her, the one of the Carsons smiling, and behind them, her, a version of her that shouldn't exist, wearing the same coat she'd burned in a dumpster 2 nights ago. She had watched it catch flame, had smelled the synthetic fabric melt, heard the snap of burning thread, and yet here was again, perfect, whole, folded neatly on the motel chair, waiting. Clara wasn't answering her phone anymore. Aaron called and called until finally a voice picked up. Not Clara's. A woman. Curt. Institutional. Ms. Wren is an observation. No visitors allowed. What hospital is this? She was never admitted here. Click. Aaron tried the number again. Now it didn't exist. She stepped outside into the motel parking lot. The night air was colder than it should have been. Cars were coated in a fine layer of frost in August. The lights flickered, and in one of the windows across the lot, she saw herself, again, standing behind the glass, expressionless, wearing the coat, holding a spiral in her palm. She didn't move, but her lips parted, one silent word. Run. Aaron didn't run. She walked slowly back inside, locked the door, closed the curtains. But the spiral had already followed her. It was there, carved faintly into the wallpaper. And when she looked at the wall clock above the TV, 7:41 p.m., again, she knew what she had to do. Go back, not in time, in memory. Back to the place that started it all. Back to the police archives in Bridgefield, the town where the Carsons had vanished in 1994, where her own case file had first landed on a desk. She arrived 2 days later, but something was wrong. The town had changed. Buildings stood where gas stations had once been, a park now paved over. The street signs just slightly off. Like someone had tried to rebuild the town from a fading memory. The archives were in the basement of City Hall. Aaron flashed her old credentials. They still scanned. No one stopped her, almost like no one noticed her at all. Downstairs, the air was heavy. Files lined the walls in uneven stacks. Dust moved unnaturally, like it resisted light. She found the C drawer, pulled the Carson file. But inside, nothing. No photos. No forms. Only a note. Typed. One line. You already took what you needed. She slammed the drawer shut. Tried W for Wren. Nothing. T for time collector. Nothing. Every folder was blank. Or worse, filled with pages of spirals. Drawn in pen. Scratched with nails. Etched into carbon paper. On the far table, she found a guest log. One name, signed just 2 weeks ago. Clara Wren, 9:41 p.m. Underneath it, in handwriting that looked exactly like Aaron's own. They won't remember unless you leave something behind. Aaron looked down at her hands. The pocket watch was gone. In its place, her palm, and on her palm, now freshly carved, a spiral. She left the building without speaking, got in her car. But instead of driving away, she drove to St. Luke's Hospital, the one Clara had once worked at in the 90s, the one that had since been turned into a rehabilitation center. Inside, a nurse greeted her. He smiled too widely. Are you here for room 114? Aaron paused. Who's in 114? He just smiled again. You. She followed him down the corridor. It smelled like antiseptic and cold air. Room 114 stood open. She stepped inside and saw herself lying in the hospital bed, pale, eyes half closed, for an arm, EKG ticking softly. But the name on the chart, Hall, Aaron, admitted. March 19th, 1994. She turned to Nurse. "What is this?" He said nothing, only pulled the curtain closed behind her and locked the door. The EKG continued to beep, steady, then faster, then flatline. But Erin was still standing, still alive, still here. On the table beside the bed, a journal, worn leather. She opened it, the first page. "To anyone who finds this, you are not where you think you are." The second page, a drawing of a town map, Bridgefield, but the streets weren't labeled. Instead, they had names like Remember, Forgotten, Almost, Never Was. On the final page, the time collector doesn't erase you. He draws you again. Wrong. So people look and never see. Erin stepped back. The girl in the bed was gone. Just sheets now, still warm, but no body. And the clock on the wall ticked once. 7:40 p.m. The nurse opened the door, but he looked different now. Older or younger, hard to tell. He handed her a clipboard. "Your memory's been discharged," and walked away. Erin stood in the hall. People passed her, but no one looked at her. No one even flinched, like she didn't exist, or like she existed as someone else. She looked at the name tag, clipped to her coat. She hadn't noticed it before. Now it read, Margaret Carson. Her breath caught. A mirror on the wall across the hall showed her reflection, but it wasn't her. It was Margaret, late 30s, eyes haunted, mouth silently open. Erin dropped the clipboard and ran out of the hospital, into the street. The world looked the same, but the color was off, the sky too yellow, the trees too still. She reached her car, but the keys didn't fit, because it wasn't her car anymore. It was the Carson family van, with a baby seat in the back. She turned around, and in the window of the hospital lobby, the 12 collectors stood again, watching. One of them held up a hand. Inside it, a clock, and in place of the hands, her own name. Erin Hall was no longer sure who she was. Not just emotionally, not just metaphorically, literally, because the reflection in every mirror now showed someone different. Sometimes Margaret Carson, sometimes Clara, once even her younger self, age 14, always looking back at her with eyes that didn't blink, eyes that remembered things she hadn't lived. She sat in the parking lot, staring at the old family van. In the back seat, a crumpled school flyer dated 1994, an empty juice box, a plastic spiral, the kind you'd hang from a crib mobile, and tucked beneath the seat, a Polaroid, faded, grainy, but unmistakable. The Carson children frozen, their eyes wide, smiles unnatural, and in the window behind them, a man, or a shape, tall, impossible to define, holding a clock with no hands. Erin clutched the photo to her chest and whispered to herself, I have to remember who I am. But the more she tried, the more the memories bled, like old ink soaking through thin paper. She returned to the motel, or what she thought was a motel. The sign now read, The Everstay Lodge, where you never left. Inside, her key no longer fit, but the door was already open. And inside the room, sitting at the desk, was herself, older, hair silvered, eyes ringed in deep black, writing in the spiral journal. She didn't look up, just kept writing. Erin stepped inside. What are you doing? She asked. The older version didn't stop, trying to trap it, the memory, before it fades. Before what fades? She looked up now, and her voice cracked. Before I forget that I ever lived. Erin stepped closer, saw the journal. It was filled with page after page of names. some crossed out, some circled, and at the top of the current page. Hall, Aaron. Wren, Clara. Carson, Margaret. You. Yes, you. The one watching. The one reading. Somehow, even you were part of this. What is this? Aaron whispered. The older her tapped the page. It's the list. For what? For the ones he keeps. She didn't have to ask who he was. The time collector. The one who traded moments for existence. Who plucked people from memory like threads from fabric and stitched them into something new, something wrong. The clock on the nightstand ticked backward again. 7:39:45. 7:39:44. Aaron turned back to the mirror. Now it showed Clara. Clara, eyes wide, mouth moving silently. And then, sound, from the glass itself. He's rewriting you. Aaron backed away. Too late. The light overhead flickered violently. The floor shook, and the spiral journal slammed shut on its own. When she looked again, the older version of herself was gone. Only her coat remained, and on the coat, pinned like a name tag, a slip of paper. You're running out of time. Aaron ran, down the hall, out into the street. But the world was changing. The people weren't people anymore. They moved on loops. One man watering the same patch of grass over and over. A woman pushing an empty stroller in a perfect circle. Every few seconds, they'd reset. Start again. At the end of the block, she saw it. A door. Standing alone. No frame. No wall. Just a door. And etched into the wood, where you began, she opened it and stepped inside. Darkness, then light, then home, her childhood home, the wallpaper, the ticking clock, the smell of chicken noodle soup on the stove, and her mother, alive, humming softly, washing dishes like nothing had ever happened. Aaron stood frozen. Mom, the woman turned. Smiled. Oh, honey, I just set the table. Don't forget to wash up. It wasn't her mother. Not really. She was too still, too perfect, a constructed memory. But Aaron stepped forward anyway, sat at the table, and there, next to her plate, was another spiral, smaller, made of paper. Unfolding, it revealed a single sentence. The moment you accept this is the moment you disappear. She stood, fast, and everything shattered. The kitchen broke apart like glass. The walls folded, the table inverted, and through the cracks, the collectors, marching in unison, one by one, carrying clocks in their arms, each labeled with a name. Aaron saw hers, twice, one old, one new, and they placed them both on the same shelf. Time convulsed. Aaron dropped to her knees. Her body began to change. Age cycling. Hair color shifting. Like someone was fast-forwarding through all her lives. Until everything stopped. Silence. She stood in a white room. Alone. Except she wasn't. Clara was there. Tears on her face. Holding something. A photo album. She opened it, page by page. Each one a memory they had never lived. They replaced everything, Clara whispered. Our childhoods, our parents, our names, all of it. Why? Because remembering is how he feeds. Who? The time collector. The room trembled again. Walls cracked, and from behind Clara, a door opened, a light beyond it, warm, real. We can escape, Clara said, but only if we forget. Forget what? Everything. Aaron stepped toward the door, but paused. What if I want to remember? Clara smiled sadly. Then you'll live in the spiral. The light flickered. The world pulsed. And Aaron, made her choice. Some endings are loud. Explosions. Screams. Doors slamming shut. But some are whispers. Tiny, steady moments. A breath held too long. A clock refusing to tick. And sometimes the ending is remembering something you swore you'd forgotten. Erin Hall stood at the edge of the spiral. Beyond her, a light, a doorway, a possibility. Behind her, Clara, holding that photo album of memories neither of them were sure belonged to them anymore. Step into the light, Clara said, and forget everything. It's the only way out. Erin hesitated, because something inside her still held on. A thread, a name, a frozen house in a quiet street. 7:41 p.m. I can't, she whispered. If I forget, who will remember them? The Carsons. Clara, her own life, the part she couldn't prove existed. Clara stepped into the light, tears in her eyes. The door closed behind her, gone, and Erin stayed. She turned back toward the spiral, let unfold around her. Time stretched, bent, tore. She saw the world behind glass, the real world, the one where the Carson house had been bulldozed in 2006, where no one remembered them, where no missing person report was ever filed, where her own name, Erin Hall, had been redacted from police databases. Wiped clean, she drifted deeper into the spiral, saw herself at 6 years old, staring at a snow globe, a clock tower inside, then at 14, standing in a hallway, whispering her name into a tape recorder. This is Erin Hall. If you find this, I'm real. She saw Margaret Carson at the kitchen table, her hand frozen mid-reach. Max and Lily at the television, eyes glassy. Jacob Wren, sitting in a dark room, scribbling spirals on napkins. Everyone forgotten. Everyone remembered only by the spiral. Erin reached the center, and there, sitting on a plain wooden chair, was him, the time collector. Not a monster, not a shadow, just a man, wearing a dark coat, hands clasped gently over a ticking watch. He looked at her and smiled. You made it further than most, he said. Erin stood still. Who are you? I collect time, he said simply. I keep what others abandon. Seconds, memories, people. He gestured to the space around them. It stretched infinitely. Billions of ticking clocks, each labeled not by numbers, but names. You preserve the forgotten? She asked. No, he said. I preserve the act of forgetting. That's what people ask for, whether they know it or not. Erin, clench your fists. You erase lives. I fulfilled their wishes. The mother who wanted to pretend her children never existed. The officer who didn't want the guilt of a case unsolved. The neighbor who ignored the smell. All of them chose forgetting. And so I obliged. He stood now, walked past her. Behind him, the spiral shivered. But you did something rare. What? You remembered. He turned back, even when it cost you everything. He held out a watch. Old, cracked. Erin's name was carved on the back. Take it, he said. Why? Because it means you belong here, but not the way you think. Erin took the watch. It was cold, but the moment her fingers closed around it, she saw everything. She saw the Carsons, not frozen, but trapped, looping their last moments, over and over. Margaret reaching for the table, Max asking for juice, Lily laughing at the static on the screen. She saw Clara, now in a different life, married with no memory of Erin. She saw herself across infinite timelines. Teacher, detective, daughter, victim, even you, the one hearing this now, your name, etched faintly into the background, because you watched. And in doing so, you remembered too. The time collector stepped back. "There's no going back," he said. Erin nodded. "I know." She opened the watch. Inside, instead of gears, a key. Small, silver, worn. She turned, and behind her, the spiral parted. A door, wooden, familiar. The Carson house. Exactly as it had looked that night. March 19th, 1994. 7:40 p.m. Erin stepped through. And this time, she wasn't there to save them. She was there to witness. Because sometimes remembering is the only justice the forgotten ever get. The house flickered. She walked the hallway, past the clock ticking its last forward tick. Saw the family. One last time. Still, beautiful, untouched. A snapshot of grief no one else had dared to carry. She placed the key on the table, next to the spiral, and whispered, "You were real." The world folded in silence, not in fear, but peace. Erin didn't vanish. She became the witness, the memory, the crack in the glass, so the world could no longer pretend it didn't see. Today, the Carson house is gone. But sometimes, at 7:41 p.m., neighbors report a light in the window, a woman walking the halls, a clock ticking where there should be none. And if you stand very still, you might hear her voice. I remember you. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe. Tell me where in the world you're watching and what time the truth found you.